Hey, folks, welcome to the most censored comedian in America who hasn't sexually assaulted anybody. All right. I realize there's other censored comedians. I don't want to claim to be the most. There are others out there, but one of the most censored. As most of you already know, my show Redacted Tonight has been canceled after 8 years due to U.S. sanctions. In the same moment, my podcast, Moment of Clarity, was deleted from Spotify, even though it's not owned by RT America. And all the Redacted Tonight YouTube videos are banned throughout EU and the UK. So that happened last week, but we're not talking about that today. Well, we might a little bit, but let's see. Trying to go live on Rockfin. All right, I'm live there as well. We're going to get into the three sides of propaganda, the three views of the propaganda that is going on right now in the war in Ukraine. In 1 minute, I'll get into that. And yeah, I'm gonna get into that. Going forward, these videos that I'm doing right here, they will go live as you're seeing right now, and they'll be open to all. And then they will go to patrons only at patreon.com/Lee Camp. And they'll probably be, patron only for a couple of days, and then they'll be free again at patreon.com/Lee Camp. So for now, that's going to be the process. I hope you see fit to join up at patreon.com/Lee Camp because that's how I'm hoping to keep something like Redacted Tonight going. The lowest level is $1.25 a week. So I hope you see fit to help out there. But let's get into it. So you might have heard one of the big. So there's a lot of. I figured we would take one example of the warring propaganda on each side, because in any war there's info war, right? Sorry to use fucking Alex Jones' term, but there's an info war as well. And rather than just say, oh, it's all chaos and we can't know what's happening and it's all bullshit, let's take one incident and see if we can nail down. And I'm going to give you all sides of this. So this is you can't claim I'm only giving the American side or I'm only giving the Russian side. I'm going to give you three separate views of the same event, and then you can decide where you want to stand on it. So this is a big deal. The yesterday and today, CNN and others reporting about this hospital that was bombed by Russia. Let's see here. So here's the article. And Mariupol Children's Hospital, many people are calling it a children's and maternity ward hospital, bombing in one of many attacks on medical facilities since Russian invasions, WHO says. And then it goes into it, and it shows a CNN report on about that. It shows this video of someone walking through the hospital, and it's bombed out, and it looks like chaos. And so for your average American, this is true, and most people in Western media, anyone who watches CNN and believes it, this is fucking horrifying, right? This is, wow, Russia is now intentionally bombing hospitals, bombing children and maternity ward hospitals, just to what? Just to kill civilians, just to show how powerful they are. So that's the view they're giving you. And then let's dig into what could be the reality. So, and that wasn't just CNN, by the way. That was covered by multiple outlets. Everybody's horrified, which, if that's the reality of it, that they literally have just decided, hey, we're murdering all children and women in maternity wards, then that is horrifying. So this is an article at Popular Resistance, great outlet, by the way. Let's see here. Article Popular Resistance, disarming Ukraine day 15, a hospital bombing in a no-fly zone. And it's a great analysis of what's going on with this hospital bombing to look at just one incident. So He gives the details of the hospital bombing. He says Zelensky repeated his call for a NATO no-fly zone, which, by the way, is basically a call for nuclear war. I mean, it is honestly the end. You're basically asking for the end of humanity if you have a no-fly zone, because then you got to shoot down Russian jets. You shoot down Russian jets, you end up in nuclear war. It's kind of like pretty obvious. But anyway, that's what Zelensky's calling for because of this hospital bombing. So here's the analysis in this article from Popular Resistance. This is curious. The three-story building is quite large with more than 100 rooms. Pictures show that all the windows have been destroyed by a huge pressure wave. If there had been people in the building, many would be dead. I mean, that's a given, right? If you have a bomb that blows out all of the windows, destroys essentially the building, you would have bodies fucking everywhere. And all of the others that survived would have cuts from glass and other debris flying around. So how come there were allegedly only 17 people injured, which is what even the Western media is saying? Only 17 people injured in a bomb that destroyed this entire building and blew out all the windows. The video taken shortly after the incident and published by CNN shortly thereafter shows the completely destroyed interior of the hospital, but no casualties and no traces of blood on the floors, which again, you would see just immense amounts of blood everywhere. If you have a bomb that blows windows, and you saw in just that second of footage I showed, there's bed frames everywhere. Unfortunately, people would have been killed in just massive numbers, and there would have been blood everywhere. The video taken, I read that. So CNN only showed one man in uniform who had some blood on his face. Other persons in the pictures have no visible signs of wounds. But here's where you get into the key stuff. Now, you could exempt all of that. You know, you could say, I don't trust you, Lee, even though you're not at RT America anymore. You clearly are just making shit up. Or you just want to listen to Russia. Or maybe you're just like, well, maybe it blew all the people in the hospital out the windows. And so there were no bodies or anything because they all just shot out the windows. Whatever it is you want to believe. But here's the key, kind of the more key factor. A day before that bombing, so a day before there was any news of this hospital being bombed, the bomb had not hit the hospital yet. A day before, there was a news piece in a Russian magazine called Linta.ru, published March 8th, the day before, at midnight local time? Midnight local time. And it had mentioned that hospital. The piece was fetched from archive.org. It's a report from Linta.ru reporter in Donbass. Here's what it says. Quote, they can't hold out for more than a week. Residents of Mariupol, that's the city that was hit, that's where the hospital is, talk about the humanitarian catastrophe that is unfolding before their eyes. So let's just begin with, this is clearly not Russian propaganda, because it's talking about the humanitarian catastrophe in that city. War is fucking ugly, and I'm opposed to this war, and I'm opposed to all wars. I'm opposed to a Russian invasion. I'm opposed to neo-Nazis killing Russians in Ukraine. I'm opposed to all of this shit. So this is clearly not the Russian propaganda angle, because it's talking about the catastrophe in that city. It's not saying the city's doing well. So the correspondent of Linta visited the village of blah, blah, blah. Some of the residents adjacent to the miracle managed to get territory controlled by the DPR. So there's a lot of extra details here. But here we get to the key part. Let's see. Who is Igor, though? One of the refugees. His name is Igor. Igor said that in the last days of February, people in uniform came to the maternity hospital where his mother works. He does not know whether they were fighters of the armed forces of Ukraine or the nationalist battalion Azov, which is Nazis, banned in the Russian Federation. The military knocked down all the locks, dispersed the staff of the maternity hospital, and set up firing points in the hospital in order, as they explained to the doctors, to prepare the fortress of Mariupol for defense. The reaction of the military to objections is standard. Blows with rifle butts, shooting in the air. So this is the day before the hospital is hit. And this article, which is, like I said, clearly not Russian propaganda. It's saying there is a catastrophe, a humanitarian catastrophe in that city. People are trying to flee. But it's saying that hospital weeks earlier was taken over by either Ukrainian armed forces, which, have a large Nazi element, or the Azov Battalion, which is basically full Nazi, full on Nazi. You've heard of full frontal. This is full Nazi. They have like fucking swastikas on their helmets. So they decided to pick this hospital as a place for the fortress of the town. And they kicked out all the doctors. Apparently, if the doctors fought back, they doctors fought back, they hit them with, rifle butt or whatever. And that's coming from one of the refugees that live there. Now, again, I've said this a couple of times. This article is a day before the fucking bomb hits. So this refugee and this article had no need to like say, that hospital we just bombed was filled with Nazis. It was a Nazi fortress. This is before the bomb hits, a refugee in the city talking about what was going on in that hospital. That would also explain why there aren't bodies everywhere, because if you clear out a hospital and just put a few soldiers in it as a fortress, then there aren't that many people there when the bomb hit. And again, I'm going to get into the more sides of this propaganda. I'm not just going to give these sides. I'm going to get into deeper. So right now, if you're screaming, this is just the Russian angle or something, hold on to your fucking plastic shorts or plastic underwear or whatever it is you have to wear in order to not spooge yourself. So that's this article the day before. On March 7th, the permanent mission of the Russian Federation to the UN published a statement by its permanent representative that made the humanitarian situation in Ukraine. The briefing had been scheduled for March 7th. That's 2 days before the bombing. The statement says, by our records, 200,000 civilians are trapped in Mariupol alone and held at gunpoint by the Azov Battalion. So this is the Russian side of things. And again, I'm giving you multiple sides. You can choose which one you're going to go with, okay? I'm letting you decide, because in this propaganda war, like, if we're not there and we can't see it, it's ridiculous to just say this is the absolute truth. It's very tough to do that. So I'm giving you multiple sides of this fucking thing. So this is the Russian angle of things. There's 200,000 people trapped in there at gunpoint by the Azov Battalion. The humanitarian situation in cities deteriorates rapidly. As for humanitarians who are ready to help, they cannot get in there and prevent the unfolding disaster. People in other regions of Ukraine have been blocked by nationalist battalions. Nationalist, by the way, means far right as well. Find themselves in the same desperate situation. Ukrainian radicals show their true face more distinctly by day. Locals report that Ukrainian armed forces kicked out personnel of the natal hospital, the maternity hospital of the city, and set up a firing site within the facility. So that is 2 days before the bombing. So again, this article is saying we have these records. On March 7th, the maternity hospital in Mariupol was mentioned in the UNSC meeting as being occupied by Ukrainian military, at least Ukrainian military, if not the actual Azov Nazis. On March 7th, Linta.ru published a report from a reporter in Donbass who had interviewed someone who said the hospital was occupied by possibly Azov or other Ukrainian military forces. On March 9th, the hospital gets bombed and completely destroyed, but with astonishing few alleged casualties. That's even alleged. So that's even our propaganda side of things. CNN's propaganda side of things still doesn't allege that many people died or were injured in that bombing. Astonishing few casualties, none of which are documented despite video records taken on the scene shortly after the incident. Shortly thereafter, President Zelensky uses the bombing to publicly press for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. No-fly zone is, again, even if you don't want to say it's instant nuclear war, at the very least, it is a full-on hot war between Russia and the U.S. Can you imagine what that would fucking look like? Can you imagine the number of dead in that situation? It would be unbelievable. Okay, so there's the reality to some degree of the different sides of this, what went down in this hospital bombing. Now, I'm going to give you a third angle. So you've had two sides of it. You've kind of had three. This is almost four angles of propaganda. I said three, but well, anyway. It's tough to keep all the angles of propaganda going. It's you just can't. I need a chalkboard or something. I need a fucking Glenn Beck white erase board with a fucking marker. Someone's asked me if I said firing squad. No, I did not say firing squad. Anyway, okay, so you've got the CNN Western U.S. government talking points, which is Russia just started bombing maternity wards and children's hospitals because, I don't know, they think it's fun, maybe, or they think that killing innocent civilians will just make the Ukrainians give up because it sucks. I don't know why. Maybe they don't give motivation. They're out of their minds. Maybe that's their motivation. But anyway, the U.S., CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all of them, U.S. government view of this event is Russia has just decided to bomb maternity hospitals, children's hospitals, etc. Then there's the angle from the Russian Federation 2 days before, which said this hospital's been taken over by Nazis. It's being used as a Nazi stronghold and Ukrainian military stronghold to fight and to, by this again, there's the Russian Federation viewpoint or their talking points. It's being used to keep the 200,000 people in that city kind of trapped in that city because they can't leave because the Azov battalion and others are telling them they can't leave or they'll be shot. Okay, that's the Russian Federation angle. So now we have two. Now here's a third is let's assume that is the reality, okay? That Ukrainian military, likely Nazi-linked, has taken over this hospital. That's why it was bombed. It seems to be that is the reality because we've gotten multiple angles, including refugees in that town saying that's what happened. So let's assume that's reality. Does that necessarily mean that Russia is absolutely right and they were bombing Nazis and so, all right, go Russia? Well, not necessarily, because if you were to ask, let's say, a Ukrainian military guy, someone in the Ukrainian military who is, let's say, not a Nazi, because, I don't think you need me to explain their viewpoint. We know what fucking Nazis want. Wow, Timothy, thank you for the donation. That's fucking incredible. But for all you that maybe don't have $50 like Timothy, please join patreon.com/LeeCamp. Anyway, so let's say Ukrainian military does what we saw in that article. They take over the hospital, they kick everyone out of it, they tell the doctors go fuck yourselves, and they say this is the best place for us to defend the town. Get the fuck out of here, and we're gonna use it as a fortress. Let's say that happens. What would their view of everything be? Well, their view would be we're entitled to defend our town from Russians coming in. So let's defend it the best way we see fit, which is to take over this hospital and kick everyone out and basically put, a certain number of gunmen in there, et cetera. And furthermore, they would probably say that staging it for propaganda purposes is useful. So when it gets bombed and the Ukrainian military goes, well, let's tell everyone that it was filled with women and children. Well, they're fighting a fucking insurgency in their mind. So why not tell everyone that it was filled with children and pregnant women? So by their view, that's, view number 3. By their view, absolutely. So what? You lied about it, that you were using it as, you said weren't using it as a fortress and it was filled with children and pregnant women. So what? You lied. You lied for, in their view, you lied for good reason to defend your country. So that's their view. And then there's there's probably the refugee view, many of them trying to get out of that city or whatever, which is probably fuck you. Why are you using something like a maternity hospital as your fortress, which then means it's going to get bombed, which then means this city does not have a maternity hospital anymore, a children's hospital anymore, because you decided to fucking make it into a war or center of the war. So there's probably a lot of refugees that feel that. By the way, there are also a lot of refugees in that area and areas of Ukraine who consider themselves Russian, don't even view themselves as Ukrainian, and want to, yes, they want to stay in their home, but right now they want to get out to Russia. Many of them have Russian passports because they view Russia as the safe place to be when there's a fucking war going on. So there is kind of all of the viewpoints. And I didn't give the kind of deeper, because I've done it on previous videos, I didn't give deeper the deeper issues in the Russian stance on things, the Russian view of things, which is NATO has expanded over the years. 17 countries have a military alliance surrounding us. The U.S. has filled Ukraine, a former part of the Soviet Union, with missiles pointed at us. They filled them with heavily armed neo-Nazis. They created a coup and put in a U.S. puppet government that is Nazi-backed. Even though the president Zelensky is Jewish, that doesn't mean the Nazis aren't powerful in that government and in that country. So that's the kind of deeper analysis of the Russians' point of view of why they're doing this. And, you know, the deeper side of, I actually do have one more video I need to show you. Well, I'll get to that in a second. The deeper view of the U.S. analysis, the U.S. government analysis. But anyway, any one of those viewpoints that you take, or except for the CNN viewpoint, all of the others, even if you believe the, let's say you were on the side in those viewpoints that I just listed, you were on the side of the Ukrainian military, and you said, yeah, they should fucking use the hospital because it's got some really good places for people to stand with guns. Let's say that was your viewpoint. You still shouldn't want CNN using garbage propaganda. Like, all of these viewpoints still point, except for the CNN one, still point to CNN being garbage. Like, there are many ways to look at what's happening right now, but this whole, Russia bombed a hospital filled with women and children seems to be, according to all those other facts I just gave you, bullshit. And that is that's what we're getting right now from CNN and the others is just this incredible level of garbage. So that should be infuriating to almost anyone. Even if you're like, Russia needs to stop right now, this war needs to end right now, even if that's your standpoint. And by the way, that's my standpoint. You should still want the fucking truth. You should still want reality. You should want to live in reality and know reality. So this shows you how much of just sheer garbage you're getting right now from New York Times, CNN, Fox News, all of them, both right-wing and liberal outlets aligning to create more war. That's the irony. And I covered this in an article on Patreon, on Patreon, but the empathy of Americans and many in the West, a lot in the West, a lot of the world right now has a great deal of empathy for those that are harmed in this conflict in Ukraine. But that empathy is actually being weaponized to keep the war going. And actually, I'm jumping ahead of myself because I wanted to show one more thing about. So the U.S. right now is doing everything they can to crush any dissenting viewpoints, any true understanding of what's going on in this conflict. That is why RT America was fucking shuttered in the span of 12 hours. That's why my show was canceled. And it's why other people are being censored and deleted right now. So there's a very successful Twitter account that was actually giving the real on the ground analysis in Ukraine, a very accurate analysis. What I've been told from people, I wasn't reading it, but I've been told from journalists I rely on that it was a very accurate analysis. It was called ASB Military was the Twitter account. And it was deleted. The whole thing just fucking suspended, deleted, basically for putting up a video with the reality on the ground in Ukraine, because the U.S. government does not want you to see that. And they don't want you to have that information. And so it was just deleted, I think, yesterday. And so I want to show you. So Max Blumenthal tried to, journalist for the Gray Zone, he tried to post the video that got them deleted. And that tweet was then deleted, not by him, but by Twitter, I guess. So as you can see, Max tried to put it up there. He said Twitter just nuked ASB Military after it posted this revealing video, which is then gone. However, someone else then was able to get it up kind of in a weird screenshot. They were able to get the video up. So now I'm going to try and show you the video best I can, but it's not going to be very big, I don't think. So there's no audio, it appears, but there is. Well, hold on. Actually, I should read this ahead of it. It says residents of Kharkiv. God damn it. Residents of Kharkiv outraged at Ukrainian military for deliberately positioning their units and weapons in residential areas. Multiple videos like this from around Ukraine where the population directly approaches the military and tells them to leave from their area. So basically, the Ukrainian military is using civilian areas as setup centers. And they're doing it because, not just because that gives them a propaganda win. If Russia bombs that area, they can go, say Russia bombing civilians. But beyond just that, they can, they're less likely to get bombed if they're in civilian areas. They can stay there probably more easily, and the Russian military is less likely to bomb them because they are in civilian areas. So, okay, now let's look at this video. This is the Ukrainian citizen. I'm saying right here, using the howitzers, and now they'll answer back. Here are 2 schools. Take the howitzers away. Take the howitzers to the fields. Our father's the head of the military school. Why the howitzers are placed here?
Кто вам такое сказал?
I'm director of the kindergarten.
И что? И что? И вы сейчас и вы хотите слить наши позиции?
Anyway, it's pretty clear. I mean, it's pretty clear what's going on. These citizens are asking the Ukrainian military not to be in their area because when you're in that area, you are more likely to get them bombed. Now, again, there's multiple angles from this. If you were wanted the Ukrainian military side, you'd say, well, they're less likely to get bombed in residential areas, so they should be there. If you wanted the Russian side of things, you'd say they're trying to hide amongst civilians and they're getting civilians killed, even though we, meaning the Russian military in this sense, in this instance, are trying not to kill civilians. So there's multiple angles of that. But anyway, clearly that video is dangerous for the Western, the U.S. ruling elite to have out there, to have seen, because that video got that Twitter account, ASB Military, just completely deleted. And Max Blumenthal then tried to repost it, and that tweet got deleted. So clearly this is a dangerous tweet that they don't want out there. And they're doing their best to, dangerous video, and they're doing their best to cover it up. Okay, so I've given you all these multiple angles of what's going on, but, they are pointing to a reality. They are pointing to a reality that is not what CNN's feeding you, not what the New York Times, Washington Post, U.S. government is feeding you. Again, I'm opposed to the expansion of NATO. I'm opposed to what the U.S. has done surrounding Russia and, forcing them into terrible situations. But I'm also opposed to the Russian invasion. I'm opposed to bombing and the killing of civilians, because fucking war is brutal. War is brutal no matter how much you could sit here and argue till you're blue in the face that Russia's trying not to kill civilians, and war is still going to be brutal. That's fucking how it works. So, and that's why I'm anti-war, is because you know who dies in war? Fucking innocent civilians. It's also why I'm against economic war. You know who dies in economic war? Fucking innocent civilians. Endlessly. And it's horrific. And these leaders of almost all nations, I don't want to speak for every nation, but most nations are sociopaths. That's how they got there. You don't get there without being a sociopath. But one more note I wanted to give you. I did another video, and I did a column at patreon.com/Lee Camp, where I talked about how the U.S. wants this war to continue. That's probably the most censored side of all this, is that while they show you, oh my God, look at the horror, look at all the oh my God, they hit a maternity hospital. Oh my God. Oh, this is so terrible. While they do all of that, our mainstream media, U.S. government, while they do all of that, they want this war to continue. They want it to fucking keep going. Not only some point to how much money they're making with weapons contracts, how much money the media is making, because they lost 40% of all viewers after Trump left office, and now they've got all those viewers back. But I think it's deeper than that. The U.S. wants global hegemony. They're losing it, And so they need to drag Russia down. They need to heavily sanction Russia, and they need to drag Russia down into a horrible, endless kind of insurgency that drains resources, like us in Afghanistan, like the U.S. in Afghanistan. And they're hoping to do it on their border because it occupies them. It's a mess. Ukrainians for a long time considered themselves Russian. Many of them do consider themselves Russian. So it's really Russians fighting Russians. So the U.S. is like, fucking hell, we win on both accounts. That's how most of our ruling elites sound. So there's a lot of reasons they wanted to keep going. But Dan Cohen did a great job of putting forward this paper from 2020. This is, or he put it, this is his old tweet from 2020, but it's from Michelle Flournoy, who was the former Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. And so she was, part of the Secretary of Defense, U.S. war machine. And now she's the head of fucking Wikipedia. So what's that tell you about Wikipedia? Straight from U.S. war machine to the head of Wikipedia. Woo-hoo-hoo! Anyway, when she was Secretary of Defense, she and others in the U.S. war machine and the U.S. government admitted that Ukraine could not fight against Russia, that there's no chance Ukraine will beat Russia. There's no insurgency that actually does good things for Ukraine other than get a lot of people killed. And that's just the unfortunate reality. You can be opposed to this war and understand that as well. And anyway, so here is Dan's, let's see here. Here's Dan Cohen's post about it. Dan Cohen said, thinking back to simpler times when arms manufacturer-funded think tanks used to admit that Ukraine fighting Russia was completely futile, though still calling to send them weapons. Now U.S. government and media pretend Ukraine can win, ensuring war continues and more people will die. That's what they're doing right now. They're pretending Ukraine has any shot of winning something here. They do not. They do not. They just have a chance to fight for years with just countless people dying. That would be, for them, that's fucking the best they could hope for. There's no chance of winning something here. So here's Dan's post from 2020. Flournoy's paper called for the U.S. to arm Ukrainian forces to fight Russia while acknowledging the futility of that fight. Ukraine is cannon fodder for Washington's zero-sum proxy war against Moscow. The U.S. wants permanent chaos. So here is Flournoy's paper from when she was Undersecretary of Defense. The United States, and as he highlighted part of it, the United States must provide Ukrainian armed forces with training and equipment necessary to resist Russian-backed forces and Russian forces operating on Ukrainian territory. That is not to suggest that Ukraine will ever be able to stand up to the full Russian military. There you have it, folks. So in case you were wondering whether our government and our media know that Ukraine cannot win this and know that all they're in for is just fucking death and destruction, yes, they do. They do. And they're fucking fine with it. They view Ukraine as cannon fodder in their fucking proxy war. So every time you see a report from CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or NBC or CBS or BBC or ABC or CBC or any of the fucking state-backed networks that don't get sanctioned into oblivion because they're the good kind of state-backed networks. Anytime you hear reports from them about, oh my goodness, let's poor Ukrainians, let's send them guns, let's send them money to buy guns. We have the U.S. just put in $14 billion in aid to Ukraine. You know what aid means? Fucking guns, munitions, all of that you're hearing right now. That is so the U.S. can keep this war going, and they don't care how many die in the middle. They don't care how many die in their proxy war. That's equivalent to killing these people. They're actually killing Ukrainians by telling you to care about Ukrainians. I know. It's incredibly Orwellian, and it's incredibly successful, and it's working right now. 75% of America thinks we should have a fucking no-fly zone over Ukraine, which basically equals nuclear war. That's how successful this garbage propaganda is. All right. I gotta fucking calm down. Guys, if you want to see more videos like this, like I said, my show just canceled after 8 years, 375 episodes plus redacted VIP. So really over 500 episodes. If you want to see my work continue, please go to patreon.com/Lee Camp. These videos will be open to all when they're live, but then they'll be for patrons only at patreon.com/Lee Camp. And then after a couple of days, they will become free again. But and then there's other exclusive videos as well at Patreon that are permanently exclusive. So please check that out. You're funding, I hope, something really cool that I can get to work on making. And the minimum tier is, I think, $1.25 a week. So patreon.com/Lee Camp. Also, if you become a member, you can read the column I put out yesterday on the reality also in Ukraine. More details there. Okay. I think that's all I have for you right now. Oh, government secrets tonight. Yeah. Patreon. Hope you'll help me out. Hope you'll help something like Redacted Tonight continue. Because I'm the most censored comedian in America who hasn't sexually assaulted anyone. Probably not true. There's probably someone out there, but one of the most censored comedians in the nation who hasn't sexually assaulted anyone. Keep fighting.